what's meant by beyond worshiping women.
I'm just thinking, right? Like in today's society where everybody is so infatuated by women in general, it's kind of hard for a guy to realize where he'd really stand. Let me talk about my experience. The most direct way of seeing this is through dating apps. The other day I saw on online that there was this woman who signed up for an account on Tinder and then she left it for a few days and then afterwards she opens up the app to find more than 5,000 likes. I feel like if a man did the same thing, like he wouldn't even come remotely close to that number. I feel like since women have the choice, the power to choose, then the power distribution is kind of skewed in their favor. Where, for example, I see in my profile that I'll be seeing a bunch of three and fours women going after like six and seven, seven and eight. So I remember when I got back into this thing a while back, I had in mind exactly what kind of woman I was gonna go for. I had this set of criteria where like, oh, she needs to be from here, she gotta speak this language, she gotta be this tall and whatever. And then I feel like after a few days following this strict regime, it doesn't really work because the reality is in these apps, you need quantity over quality, which sounds a little bit sick, but it also explains why for any woman, it's easy for them to get to the thousands like instantly. So I feel like in this situation, most of the matches I got were either hookers or bots or just scammers or like women that I'm not attracted to because I'm an average guy in the city. So reality hits men really hard. So it kind of messes with our mindset and it makes us self doubt like, oh, are we really worse than we are in real life? Which might not necessarily be true. I feel like if you walk outside and just try to talk to women, you probably get a better reaction than you do on these apps. But it is what it is.
I mean, I think people usually go on dating apps not to date.
Yeah, the hookup.
So
But the funny thing is, right? I've noticed like in Asia, especially, since women have the power to say what they want, and naturally women don't want to hook up with strange men. So instead, you get a bunch of women on these apps who say no friends with benefits, no hookups, no whatever, no anything. And then so you cultivate a group of men who's been conditioned to think, oh, okay, maybe I can't act this way. I can't ask straight up, oh, I want to hook up with you tonight or whatever. I got to be submissive. I got to seek the woman's approval first so that I might have a chance to be with her because straight up she's already told me no, I don't want to have meaningless sex. I don't want to meet up for a fling or like a short-term thing. I want a stable relationship with a nice man, which is kind of like finding a needle in a haystack, especially like in these apps, because the original purpose is not to find like a long-term relationship. It's not Hinge or Coffee Meets Bagel, you know?
I think we gotta give like a bit of background to why this is happening. I think if you think about today's society, men need and want women far more than the reverse. Women don't
Mhm.
need and want men as much as we do.
Why do you think that women need men less?
It's because of the way modern society is pushing everything. The modern society is pushing feminism, which is empowering women and encouraging them to be strong and independent. While there's nothing wrong with that, but traditionally, men used to have more power than women. But now it's
Hmm.
more balanced. It's more like 50-50. And if you
Hmm.
do anything which empowers men, whole like society pushes you back down. They don't want to see any of that kind of stuff. It's more about equality now. That's why like even though they're preaching equality, I feel like all the feminism stuff is giving women much more power and much more privilege.
But do you think that deep down women still want the same thing?
I think deep down they still want that traditional stuff. It's just on the outside because of what society is pushing.
Like, I don't want to generalize because obviously, like, there are women out there who, are more masculine, so they might not seek the same things that the majority want. I would say it's safe to say that in general, most men want the same thing and most women want the same thing. And it's each other. That's it. That's how this world's supposed to be, you know?
If
If
you
you
like,
don't
if
want to
you
be a monk who lives in the mountains and never sees anybody else, then I feel like you need to embrace this in order to be successful in life.
because I think like at the end of the day, if you look at a man and woman, and you ask them like deep down what they want, they both probably want a traditional man and woman deep down inside. But because of society, because of how social media and everything that's going on in the world, it's kind of masking what they truly want. Like if a man said, "Oh, I want a stay-at-home wife. I want a wife who just takes care of my kids," that guy will probably get hate, and it's probably quite hard to find because nowadays all the women want to have a successful career.
Yeah,
My
they're gonna
career
get
comes first,
canceled.
even though deep down they're still somewhat traditional, but on the outside, because of social media, it's kind of masking everything.
And I think you were talking about OnlyFans the other day, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can see just from OnlyFans how much more men crave women because of the content creators on OnlyFans, 69% are female and only 31% are male. I mean, that shows you like how much more men want female.
I think that's the same, not just OnlyFans, it's also just social media in general. Notice how in your friend list, the women usually get a lot more likes and attention than if a guy posts something. I feel like even if a woman posts like the most boring post ever, they would still get a lot more likes than the guy. And that's just how it works basically on the internet.
I mean, like, even if you think about it, if I asked you to name 5 female models, I bet you could do that easily, right? But if I asked you to name like 5 male models, I don't think you can even give me like two.
Okay, I can only think of that guy who he went to prison and then I think Versace signed him because he had those eyes. Like his mugshot was really handsome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I know
that
who you're
dude.
talking about.
That's the only guy. That's the only guy I know.
I only know that guy and what
Oh,
Gigi Hadid's
Lucky Blue
brother.
Smith.
I don't know who that is.
Okay.
But I mean, if you go out to any dude, they can probably give you like 10 models. And
Yeah,
even if you go to women, I'm sure they can give you more female models than they can give you male models.
yeah, that's true.
And I'm pretty sure female models make much more than male models too, right?
I think so. So I feel like it's kind of industry specific.
Yeah, that's true. But the whole point of this conversation is about men who worship women.
Yeah.
Men who worship women are seeing women the way they want to see them, not the way that the women actually are.
It's like
It's
an
like,
imagination from the man's side. He's building this imagination of a perfect woman to him before he's actually gone out and met and got to know this woman. That is the most terrifying thing for both parties because I feel like once a guy starts to idolize and starts to worship the woman, and usually it doesn't really work because on one end the man has created an expectation for himself, which makes the woman feel pressured and feel burdened by the man constant scrutiny, and eventually she'll want to keep her distance from this guy because it's just too much for her for some strange man to come over with his agenda and trying to impose that on her, even though she might not be like that at all. Like she has a complete separate life. She's gone through all this without this man. Why does she need you to come over and start controlling her?
I mean,
And
if you
then for
think
the
about it,
yeah.
most dudes who worship women, they're worshiping women purely based on their looks. Because I'm sure there's loads of dudes out there who fall in love with celebrities because they see them on TV, in movies, from like one scene, suddenly they're in love with them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even know the person, what the person's like, their personality. All they know is how they look and how they're portrayed in the movie, which could be
Mm-hmm.
completely different to what they are like in real life.
Yeah, because men are visual animals. There's no need to deny it. I know I am. See, that's like a instinctive thing, right? When a guy meets a woman, he's not gonna be like, "Oh, she has a great personality," without even like speaking to her. There's got to be something that gets the guy's attention. And
Mhm.
for us, it's physical appearance. There's
And I
nothing
think
wrong to that. I feel like in today's world, like we're getting beat down a little bit just because we're admitting that, oh, we are physically attracted to this person, but apparently that is not okay anymore.
But I think it goes both ways though, because for men and women, the first thing that sparks attraction is the physical aspect.
Yeah,
Without the physical aspect, neither the man or the woman would continue to seek the other person.
yeah.
And then the issue with that is physical appearances change over time. People get older, wrinkles
Mm-hmm,
develop, saggy
mm-hmm.
skin, muscles fade. But the thing that doesn't change is the inner part, the inner beauty, which gets overlooked. People are worshiping the aspect that will change over time, but not the aspect that doesn't.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
It causes an issue long term. What happens 10 years down the road when they start to look different? If you think about it, if the person is worshiping the woman purely based on looks, that will cause a problem not just down the road, but in the present moment because they're like so blinded by their appearance that they're willing to like compromise what they believe in. They'll basically do anything for the woman. So this will basically cause women to walk all over the man.
Yeah, back in high school, it was kind of hard for me to talk to girls who weren't Asian.
Like
I don't know if you had that issue.
I mean, we both went to the same high school, but
Yeah,
I feel like I treated everyone the same. There was no difference between someone from the States and someone from Japan.
like you guys all just mingled, like,
Yeah, we were like just all together. Like everyone was like the same to me.
huh,
Was that
okay.
not the case for
Because
you?
like for us, it was like so apparent that we were split into these ethnic groups because we only had four white kids in our class, and then the rest were either Korean or like Asian, but are not Korean. And it's basically these three groups who are like pretty separate from each other. I feel like the only time we would ever get together, I think it was the only time that we ever got together was when we graduated and we had this party. That was pretty much like the only time where we actually like mingled. So yeah, for me, like up until graduating high school, speaking to non-Asian women was really daunting to me because to me back then they felt like a complete different species. So it was really daunting to me, you know?
But I feel like for me personally, I don't know, maybe it's because of my environment, but we had somewhat of a similar environment. Actually, now that I think about it, wherever I went, I usually didn't stick with people of my own race. I don't know why.
Uh-huh.
Even when I was in the UK,
Hmm.
when I was playing football in the UK, there were other
Yeah.
Asian players, but I wasn't close with them. I was closer with like African guys.
Hmm.
I wasn't that close with like the Asian guy. I don't even know why.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I just treated them all the same. Or
I
maybe I
mean, that's
just clicked with
good.
them better.
Yeah, that's good.
But I
That's
mean, do you
good.
still have that issue now?
I mean, not as much anymore because I feel like I kind of changed that mindset, especially last year when I went to America. Okay, this is gonna be the most controversial way of getting over anxiety. But for me, when I went to the Vegas strip club last summer, that changed my mindset completely because it was a life-changing experience for me. I've seen it in movies, I've heard people talk about it, but actually going there is a complete different story. And since it was my first time, obviously I was gonna be super nervous, but I went with a big group and I'm fortunate to have this friend who's been before. Like he knows his way. So he kind of showed me around. He did a lap with me around the club to try and pick out like a nice girl because it's my first time. Now keep in mind that I was totally unprepared to approach non-Asian women. And now all of a sudden I'm thrown into a sea of lingerie wearing white women. So you can imagine how freaked out I was back then. But it was good. It was good. I feel like when it comes to strip clubs, it's either you love it or you don't. Now, the people who don't like it will probably think it's dirty, it's disgusting, it's misogynistic, and just a general low life activity. But I think for most men, it's safe to say that we would walk out of the place feeling happy and refreshed because we were in the presence of women who had immense feminine energy and who were like totally ecstatic, even though it's their job. So, anyways, I was lucky to have this nice and bubbly woman give me my first ever lap dance, which completely decimated my preconceptions and anxieties towards non-Asian women. So after that, I just realized that, come on, they're just simply regular people, just like me.
I mean, I guess basically what you just explained, how you realized that they were regular people. I feel like
Yeah.
I experienced that since primary school and high school because I was thrown into an environment full of people from all over the world. There were like from Germany, people from the UK, people from Asia. To me, from day one, they were all the same to me. There was nothing special about one or the other. So I
That's
feel
really
like
interesting because it's similar for me as well, but I like my mindset was completely different. I don't know why. Like I just had
maybe
this
it's like,
weird invisible wall
mm,
where I just felt like I had to steer away from them back then for no reason, you
but
know?
I mean, if you look at it generally, Asian people tend to stick with Asian people.
Yeah, yeah.
But like the Caucasians would mix around a lot more.
Yeah, because they care less about stuff like this. And that is the
Yeah.
right thing to do, to be honest. It shouldn't matter at the end of the day
I
where
feel
you're
like
from.
that's also why you see much more white guys with Asian women than you see Asian guys with white women.
That's a complete different story, though.
Yeah, it's a different story for another day, but it all ties in.
We're gonna get into that.
Let's bring it back to
Um,
putting women on a pedestal. Yeah, I mean, like, it might not seem like it's related to putting women on a pedestal or worshiping women. It's not that extreme, but it's still separating people and not seeing them for what they really are.
Yeah, I think that's essentially the message that we're trying to get across.
Yeah.
Is that we should see people as they are, and that would take away a lot of your preconceptions and anxieties towards someone.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we're bombarded with all this information that we get, where we hear people saying like, "Oh, this sort of people are like this gender is like this," but that might not necessarily be true all the time because it's always differ individual to individual.
Mm-hmm. So basically, if you relate this back to men worshiping women,
Yeah.
the issue with that is essentially if a man worships a woman and sees them as someone that is perfect, it will cause the man to feel inferior. They'll feel less than the woman, as if they have less value. Because
they're seeing them as a god, right?
yeah, and no one can compare to that. And then what happens next is that the man will most likely see the woman as the key to their happiness, which continues to put the women on a pedestal and continues to worship them, which also makes the man unappealing to the women because women don't like to be put as men's number one.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah.
Because to us, our number one thing should be our goal in life.
Yeah, purpose.
Everything else comes after.
The purpose that drives us.
Because if you put a woman first, they'll feel like you're just like everyone else and you have nothing unique to offer because you are essentially putting them as your everything and that's all you have, which puts you in a bracket with every other man who is chasing.
Yeah. So I think that could be summed up by saying that men who care too much are essentially giving off a vibe to the woman to saying that, oh, I'm super available and I got nothing better to do. So love me, please, that sort of thing, which is exactly not
What
attractive at all.
What they don't want. Because we're not saying there is anything wrong with appreciating and valuing them because that's how it should be. But there's a big difference between appreciating and valuing women compared to seeing them as perfect and worshiping them.
Yeah. So I feel like for appreciation, it's more about, just liking the person for who they are, like what we've been talking about just now, but not the things that they provide or the external background that they grew up in. And I think that goes for both genders as well, for guys and girls. If all they can offer is dick or pussy, then maybe you should think that that person may not be someone that you can grow with and have some sort of meaningful relationship. So for what I've noticed basically is just to take time to observe their ideas, how they talk, what they do when they're around you, because this sort of thing is what will tell about a person, because you can't fake these forever. You can lie about your income, you can lie about other stuff, but the way you talk, the way you act somehow will just come back.
I also feel like people who don't really have that much experience with the opposite gender, they tend to get attracted to whatever, like anything that comes their way. So they're kind of blocked from seeing the true person that they're seeking. They're looking past all the flaws. They're not worshiping the women, but they're not seeing them for who they really are because they're so desperate to find something.
They'll just pick anybody who shows interest in them, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going for someone who is right for them.
But
you see, that's kind of hard, right?
That comes with experience, though.
Yeah, it does.
So it takes
and
time.
also it also comes down to how good your patience is. Sometimes when you have this girl who shows interest, but then you might not have better prospects, and if you're someone who is who just what's that word? I'm lost for word. Not desperate.
Horny.
Yeah, you could say that. Yes, if the guy is horny, then he's probably not gonna think with his head or his heart. He's gonna make more often than not an impulse decision that he may or may not regret.
I mean, this basically leads back to the guy or the girl will end up compromising their beliefs and values to be with the woman, basically giving them all the power, which at the end of the day is almost the same thing as them worshiping the women.
By giving up all his power?
Yeah. I mean, it's not the same case, and he might not view the women the same way, but the women have all the power.
So if a man feels like he's not worthy, how does that translate if a woman feels the same way? Because I feel like there must be cases where it's the woman who's chasing the guy. So I just want to give our viewers some context on what it's like on the other end.
If you look at it from a man's side, right? If a man that cares too much about the woman, they're essentially telling them through their concern and availability that they're not special and unique because they're always chasing them. And if you imagine a woman chasing a man, maybe after they've only gone on 1 or 2 dates and the woman is constantly texting him, constantly calling him, and she gets upset like when he goes out with his friends, and all of this while they aren't even a couple. So can you imagine how the guy would feel?
Mhm.
I mean, the guy would probably think she's crazy, right?
Yeah,
And
essentially.
this is basically what putting a woman on a pedestal is doing. It's the same thing, but the other way around.
Yeah, because I feel like at the end of the day, simply the fact is we just gotta treat them like how we treat ourselves because we're all humans here. We're doing the same things every day. We're waking up, we're eating, going to work, taking a shit, partying, all the stuff. Whatever we do, they do too. So it doesn't make them a god.
Yeah, even whoever you think is the most attractive person on the world, whatever celebrity or model, they all do the same thing. There's no
Yeah.
exception.
Yeah, it's just that all we see are the snippet of their highlight, like they're always showing the best side. I think anybody, not just celebrities, I feel like I do it too as well. Like whenever I'm posting on social media or whatever, it's always something that I want to show off in some way,
Nobody
or else
posts
what?
the worst
Or else
pictures.
what? Yeah, nobody would post bad pictures because the whole point of social media is for people to feel good about themselves, and it's kind of evolved into something toxic. But that's for something later. But essentially, we're getting positive feedback from our peers for the stuff we post. And that's the same for celebrities as well. For them, it's slightly different because they're more famous, but essentially they're just humans as well. They do the same stuff that we do. I mean, there's no
And
reason
like,
for us to see them any way differently.
and I mean, on social media, everyone is editing pictures. No one is that perfect. They're only showing
Yeah,
you the side of
yeah,
them that they want you to see.
yeah.
All the athletes have six-pack abs on social media, but no one is flexing their abs 24/7.
That's
Like,
so true.
there are also a lot of people who have abs on social media, but don't have abs the rest of the time.
Oh, okay.
It's because the right conditions.
Yeah. Now I see what you mean.
I mean, and it's not just that. Many people think celebrities are like gods, but most celebrities, not all, but most celebrities were born with very normal backgrounds, or some of them even came from poor backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you're like a Kardashian, they were born into fame. But like, if you look at like a lot of athletes, they came from like poor backgrounds with no money, so they
Mm-hmm.
worked their way there. They're just like everyone else. There's
Yeah.
nothing special about them. So there's no reason to like treat anyone different or idolize anyone.
Yeah. When you're trying to approach a woman, I feel like obviously confidence is important, but there's always the need to know that rejection is normal and it's part of life. So the sooner you realize it's part of the play, the sooner you can stop feeling sorry for yourself every time a girl ghosts you or shows no interest. Because at the end of the day, you have to focus on yourself. And
I mean, like, the only way to learn is to make mistakes.
yeah, and I always say that attract, don't chase.
Yeah, and like to me, I think I always tell you this, you're like
Mhm.
one rejection closer to whatever your target is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same in sport. People are afraid of making mistakes. Like even me, like sometimes I'm afraid to misplace a pass, but that's normal. Everyone makes mistakes. The best athletes in the world make mistakes.
Mhm.
Like what's that famous Michael Jordan quote? I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over again in my life. That's why I succeed. I think that pretty much summarizes everything. You have to make mistakes to learn. Unless you're making mistakes and you're not learning from it, and that's a different story.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in the future where if you want to meet and be with someone who is of high value, then of course you yourself have to grow internally in order to be someone who's high value, in order to meet and be with someone like that.
I mean, if you look at it, all those dudes or women who have like the most matches on Tinder or the most matches on whatever dating site, they probably at the same time have the most experience.
Yeah,
It goes hand in hand. There is no way for nobody with no experience on any of these apps to be like pulling in thousands and thousands of matches. It's all like
as a guy, right?
experience. Yeah, I mean, it's a different story for women.
Yeah.
Another reason why men worship women is because of the scarcity mentality. So basically, guys with this mindset think that there is a limited amount of women out there. So they feel the need to treat every single woman that gives them attention like God, because they don't know if
Mhm.
they'll be able to experience this with someone else. So
Okay.
basically, when they're stuck in this mindset, they end up being attracted to any woman that shows them any sign of interest because they don't think they can find a connection with someone else. They'll end up settling for someone much lower because they feel like, oh no, I don't think I can get someone better than this.
Yeah, which is obviously not true since,
Yeah, there are billions.
as we know, there are billions of women.
hmm
There's plenty of fish in the sea, as the quote goes.
I mean, everyone says that, but I don't think people truly grasp and understand what that means.
Okay, what's your take?
Because like, yeah, people say that and they're just like, they just brush it off and they're like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. But like, there literally really is billions of people. There's billions of women. If this one doesn't work, there's another and
Hmm.
another and another.
Yeah. I feel like me coming off from my previous relationship, when I just broke up, to me, back then, my mindset was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to find someone else who is going to be as good as her? Or like thinking about all those memories and all those nostalgia, like, oh, how am I ever going to experience that ever again? That's back then when it's fresh. But as time moves on, you kind of realize that, oh, it's actually not that bad. It's part of life. But all I'm saying is, after some time and after, kind of like walking out of that mindset and just kind of opening up myself to be able to accept the possibility of, meeting new people, that whole mindset changed different.
Basically, it's switching from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Yeah, essentially, I didn't know I was doing that. I think that's essentially what I've been doing. The switch in mindset is so important.
So at the end of the day, girls want guys that basically don't need them to be happy, but want them to be a part
Hmm.
of their life.
Okay.
Women don't want to be their ultimate purpose, right?
Hmm.
I think they want to be a part of the man's life, but they don't want to be their everything.
Yeah, it's just going back to what we were talking about, how they don't want to be the ultimate purpose, the number one purpose. Because how can she trust the guy if he all of a sudden met this woman and dropped everything in his life to focus on her? Like
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That scares everybody. Like I feel like if I turn it around and say like, oh, a girl I met, she dropped everything and told me, oh, you're my everything now. Everything I do is for you. I would get scared. Okay, fuck. I
It's
don't
like
want
too
that.
much responsibility.
It's too much responsibility. Like I can't be responsible for someone for another adult life like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like I'm not your parent or anything. Like we're supposed to grow together, not having me guide you through everything, having to take care of you every step of the way.
Mm-hmm. Women will say that they want a man to put them first and they want to be man everything. Deep down, it's not the same.
Hmm.
It's more like a test, kind
Yeah,
of testing to see whether the man will budge.
from his purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.